the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello and good morning. Wow. Things have been rocking and rolling here for the last 5 minutes, and then 20 seconds before we go live, the whole thing poops the bed. What are you gonna do? Hey, it's Monday. Welcome to it and good morning. Your turn to sit down and relax and enjoy and get a good start to your week. I am ready to go. And I'm excited today because I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. An interview with another one of my favorite authors. And I hope, I know it's not political. I know it's not Alaska. I know it's not, but that's okay because I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. I actually discovered this author because, by the way, Nick Begich will be joining us in hour two, just in case, just in case you were wondering what's going on in hour two. So in this hour, we're going to be talking with Travis JI Corcoran and author of the Aristillus series. And then in hour two, we're going to be talking with Nick Begich. Sorry, I'm just a little excited here about getting a chance to do it. I actually discovered this series of books through the narrator. I'm a huge fan of Sean Rennett, who's a great narrator. And one day I was just on Audible and I was like scrolling through, I haven't heard Sean Rennett in a while. What else is he working on? And sometimes I do that. Like I find a narrator I like and I just start listening to samples of books and I'd listen to the sample of this book and I was like, what? What? That did. And I will tell you, it caught my ear for sure. And it is a science fiction book, and it's called The Powers of Earth. That's the first of the pair of books. And it is set in the Earth in 2064. And I'll just read you the synopsis because it is that great. And Travis is sitting in the chat room in the green room right now, so we're going to pull him in here in just a second. But I want to tease you with this because I was like, what? Earth in 2064 is politically corrupt and in economic decline. The Long Depression has dragged on for over 56 years, and the Bureau of Sustainable Research is hard at work making sure that no new technologies disrupt the planned economy. 10 years ago, a band of malcontents, dreamers, and libertarian radicals bolted privately developed anti-gravity drives onto rusty, seagoing cargo ships, loaded them to the gills with 20th century tunnel boring machines and earth-moving equipment, and set sail for the moon. There they built their retreat, a lunar underground border town fit to rival Ayn Rand's Galt's Gulch, and American capitalists, Mexican hydroponic farmers, and Vietnamese spacesuit mechanics. This is the city of Aristillus. Now, if that doesn't pique your interest, I know it piqued mine. I know I was like, what? It is an excellent read, or in my case, a listen, because as we talked about before, I listen to most of my books these days, but it was an excellent read. I was so sad when the second one was over, and I know now he's got a couple other ones that are kind of like prequel shorts and some other things, but without further ado, let's just jump into this. I don't want to belabor this anymore. I want to talk to author Travis JI Corcoran, who joins us this morning to discuss Aristillus and more. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for that amazing intro, Michael. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on board. I will be honest with you. I read this book and I was like, where have you been? You had all kinds of great stuff in there. So anyway, I'm sorry. This is a great honor for me. And like I said, I think a lot of people have really been, there were a lot of people that were really agitated about your book because, and you take no prisoners on that. You're just like, here is the worst thing that anybody said. And you literally put it on the book cover. And I should point out that both Aristillus, the 1 and 2, The Causes for Separation, which is the second one, and The Powers of the Earth, which is the first one, they're both Prometheus Award winners. So these are not just some libertarian screed, which I would probably produce if I tried to write something. These are actually well-written books. And so, but you take no prisoners. You slap that bad boy right on the label. This is the worst thing I've ever read. He should be put in jail. He's worse than Hitler. I don't know. It's like, whatever it is, all
All
kinds
of
of
those things and more have been said.
yeah.
And that's actually something that I stole from a socialist science fiction author, Ian Banks, a Scottish socialist. And on one of his first novels, I think The Wasp Factory, on the back cover, he had interleaved reviews. And the first one is like, the best novel ever, something new for Scottish publishing. And the next one is like, disgusting tripe. Why would anyone publish this? And back and forth. And when I saw that, a million years ago, I thought, this is great. This is an author who is really confident in what he's delivering. And that's one thing they say about a lot of things, corporate culture or art or anything. You shouldn't have something bland and homogenous that everyone will say is fine. McDonald's nuggets are fine. Some people love sushi and some are disgusted. Raw fish. I think you can really indicate that you're really delivering something precise by giving the full story, and if I'm going to open a sushi restaurant, I will, put up the reviews saying, the best sushi ever, like, this is disgusting, this is raw fish. And then someone who's just in the mood for, chicken McNuggets is not going to go there.
Right.
And so that's that. And one thing I wanted to call out is you said something very kind, which is when you got to the end of it, of book 2, you were very sad and disappointed. My inspiration for this series was from the classic The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert Heinlein. And I think, everyone knows Heinlein. I discovered that book, and with it, I discovered sort of libertarianism, and it really fit into my whole, developing worldview as a 10-year-old or something. Putting together a bunch of things, this idea of the competent man trope of people who should be able to, do things and then,
Right.
sort of set their mind to whatever and then achieve it. This sort of concept of sort of the American ideal pushing forward into the future, even if it's not exactly continuous with the current United States. I think if we look around, we can already see that
Right.
the original founding ideal of America, a lot of Americans still have it, but America as a whole maybe doesn't have it anymore. And so anyway, I read this novel and I got to the end and I was blown away. And I was also sad. It was over. And I looked, are there any sequels? And the answer is no, not really. So I read it again. And as a kid, I read this novel a dozen or more times. And for the rest of my life, I thought, I want more of the story. And finally, I decided, there's only one person who's going to write more of this sort of libertarians on the moon, and that's me.
Right.
So, let me do it.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I remember reading Heinlein as a kid, 10, 12 years old, and it was Rolling Stones and it was all these things. And by the time I got to The Moon was a Harsh Mistress, and The Number of the Beast and a couple of the other, some of his darker, kind of bigger. And by then I was in my early teens, mid-teens, and it did is as well. It kind of shaped my thought process, and like you said, kind of the manly pursuits and some of these other things in this American ideal. And it did change between that and Louis L'Amour. Those are the two things that I was reading was Heinlein and L'Amour at that time. I'm lucky I survived, but let's talk about now. I will say, and I want to continue on with Aristillus, but you see it here. You've written it in your thing. You Escape the City. You are also kind of a back to the basics kind of guy. You've written a series of books about home farming, self-preparedness, getting back to basics and our roots. We do a segment every now and then on the show called What If, which is, what if the zombies really did happen? What if we had a worldwide tidal wave? What if an asteroid struck? What if anything happened?
I've got to dig through some of your back issues because that is a topic I love engaging in with my friends.
Yeah. We just have a little bit, but you're coming from a whole different background. So give us a bit of that background before we jump into the whole Aristillus thing.
Sure. So Escape the City, I've been on a farm in New Hampshire for about 10 years, a little over 10 years. And, in Escape the City, which is a 2-volume homesteading book, there is a quote inside the front cover, which is from Robert Heinlein. And I forget the full quote, but, a man or a human being should be able to, con a boat, butcher a pig, program a computer, on and on and on. And this is the trope that, Heinlein has created. And, you look it up on TV tropes or other places, it's there, of the sort of, competent man. And so as a kid, and this is tying in before, I was talking about sort of the American libertarian experience and this, sort of, I don't want to say myth because myth implies lack of reality, but the sort of guiding vision of the frontier, where you are, measured just by your own abilities and, your sort of willingness to help others and have them help you and
Kind of an
stand on your own
ethos,
2 feet.
right?
And
Yeah.
that was always appealing to me. Reading Heinlein as a youth, engaged with that. I started reading the Foxfire books, which I imagine a lot of your listeners are familiar with, as a young teen involved in Boy Scouts. And I thought, this is something I want to do. I want to live on a farm. I want to blacksmith. I want to grow my own food. I've been spending sort of my whole life getting ready for that, learning welding and blacksmithing and all these other skills. And about 10 years ago, took the plunge. It's great fun and one of the best decisions I ever made.
And of course, now you're sharing it out there with everybody else, and you've gotten a lot of acclaim from your homesteading books on top of your science fiction books. So, I mean, that's, I think that's an exciting thing. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about. Let's see, we're coming up on the break actually, so we're going to take the break a minute early here because I don't want to. I hate start stop. Stops. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back. Travis JI Corcoran, our guest. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. Author of the book Escape the City. Those are his homesteading books. And, of course, the Aristillus science fiction series, which is the reason that I brought him on because, wow, good stuff. And we will continue with more here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. It's what we do right here across the state of Alaska and around the world at michaeldukeshow.com. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right. In the break right now with the chat room, just you, me, and 30 of our closest friends here on Facebook and YouTube. I see the books are available in paperback. Are they available in hardcover?
They are. And also an ebook.
And also on Audible. I'm just going to throw that out there because that's how I discovered it. That's there's the Amazon link from Travis's website. And this is the link to Travis's, directly to Travis's website. Boy, the internet is so slow today. What is going on? Okay. And there's his own self-publishing deal at Morlock Public, which is, I had to chuckle when I heard Morlock. So I guess the number one burning question for me is, are you going to continue the story, Travis? Is there more to come? Now that I don't want to spoil anything for everybody, but now that we've begun the journey, is anything?
Right. There's a very big transition at the end of book 2. So there is a lot more to come, and a lot of it has already been done. You alluded to earlier that there are a couple of prequel short stories. One of those is The Team, which explains a bit of the backstory about the uplifted dogs and one character, John. And another one is Staking a Claim, which is set a year or two later in the early years of Aristillus. The colony is much smaller. And in the primary books, The Powers of the Earth and Causes of Separation, and on a tangent, both of those are phrases from the American Declaration of Independence. And in Staking a Claim, there's some backstory on mining and mineral discoveries, etc. After that, I'm in the process of writing 2 young adult novels, sort of suitable for, ages 10 and up, or maybe even 8 and up. And if anyone is familiar with a great series from the 60s and 70s called The Mad Scientists Club, this is a bunch of stories, set in the, anywhere, any town, United States, a bunch of teens using ham radio and electronics and other stuff and having adventures. The Aristillus YAs that I'm working on are very much the same thing, set in Aristillus after the conclusion of book 2. And these were intended to be short stories. Each of them has grown into a novel. The first one is done. The second one is half done. I intend to release them via a Kickstarter later this year. And then after that, they'll go live at Amazon. And then the primary Aristillus series will have 2 more full-sized adult novels. And those will come out over the next few years. And those are fully plotted out and outlined, and maybe a third written at this point.
Well, I can't wait.
Thank you.
I cannot wait. They're definitely good stories. What's the difference between book 1? It's a 2-book series right now. Plus, there's 2 short stories that are 2 shorter novellas that are basically backstory. It's going on right now. If you go to Morlock, you can see he's got the links on the right hand side there for all the.
Or even just searching at Amazon on my name will get it for you.
Else. All right. Yeah, absolutely. Brian says he remembers the Mad Scientist Club. I don't remember that. Maybe I just missed that. I mean, I remember the Hardy Boys. I remember Nancy Drew, Encyclopedia Brown. I remember a few of those, but I pretty much skipped over a lot of that when I was younger and went right to the Louis L'Amour and Robert Heinlein novels, as I mentioned earlier. I really love to read. So it was one of those. My mom, I remember graphically, my mom is like, "You're done with that one already? I just got it for you 2 days ago." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I'm not buying you another one until next week." And I was like, "But Mom, I want another book." But it was it was a thing, that was for sure. Used bookstores were not a huge deal in Fairbanks, Alaska at the time, so that's how it works. All right, we're coming up on it here. We're about 30 seconds out. Travis JI Corcoran is our guest. We're going to start now with a little bit of backstory, who he is, where he came from, and then we're going to kick into the whole premise behind Aristillus. We got a little bit of it there with the moon as a harsh mistress, but we'll continue that. Please like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube and Facebook things, and let's get it going on. And don't forget, go out and buy his book or audiobook. The audiobook is awesome. I gotta say that. All right, here we go. Jumping into it. 2 seconds left. That's it. Let's do it. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke show.
I am a perfect angel. I am not a pain in the anything. That's what it is. It's just my libertarian tendencies. All right, let's continue on now. Our guest is Travis Corcoran, who is the author of the book Escape the City, the Aristillus series. He's got a lot of stuff going on, but I wanted to talk a little bit about who you are, where you came from, just sitting around a coffee pot, kind of thing. Tell me a little bit about growing up and
Cool.
What your whole thing. Let's go.
I grew up in northwestern New Jersey, and a lot of people who aren't from the area think, oh, one huge span of pavement from sort of Boston, DC, but northwestern New Jersey specifically is part of Appalachia. So I was up in the hills, small town, 90% forest. I grew up in a house that backed up onto miles and miles of forest. I think that semi-rural living played in a little bit to my interests in the frontier and in sort of Revolutionary War culture and homesteading, all this other stuff, and also into sort of libertarianism. I remember the first science fiction novel I read was around second grade or so. In the school library. I was very interested in science, and I saw this old 1950s hardcover with a little atom symbol on the side.
Right.
And I thought, okay, great, science. And it was called The Red Planet. So I thought, okay, it's about Mars. This will be very interesting. And it was a novel, one of Heinlein's famous juveniles. And I had never, come across science fiction before. I didn't even know what it was. And so that was the, beginning of a love affair. And it was actually, around that age, I don't know if it was second grade or more like third or fourth, but these old, unlike audiobooks now or paperbacks or something, the old hardcovers had dust jackets that wrapped around. And so on the back inside, you've got a, picture of the author and some words about, grew up in Missouri, went to the Naval Academy, did this and that. And it started dawning on me that, gee, maybe when I grow up someday, I could write a science fiction novel. And it took a long time and a bunch of false starts, but that was some of the inspiration. And, then life took its various passes, moved around, went to college in upstate New York, unfortunately got stuck in Massachusetts for far too long. As I say in the bio at Amazon, I escaped across the border from the People's Republic of Massachusetts out to New Hampshire.
That wins you lots of friends right there. I just
excellent. And so I've been in New Hampshire 10 years. About a year and a half ago, I actually ran for state government. So I'm now a representative in the House in New Hampshire. And so I get to do all sorts of, and New Hampshire is really good for libertarian stuff with the Free State Project and everything else. So, get to, be one of the 15 people voting to legalize machine guns. That didn't pass the House. And if it had passed the House, probably the governor wouldn't have signed it. And all sorts of other stuff.
You're just a troublemaker is what you're saying.
I am, and I'm not even telling some stories I could.
I know, really. It's just crazy, and I definitely feel it. So tell me about the writing of Aristillus. Now, you talked about A Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Obviously, that's got a really, that's part of that Genesis seed and everything else, Friday and all that. But what did you say? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a story that kind of picks up that thread.
Yeah.
Not the same characters, not the same, but picks up that thread or that thought.
Yep. That's a great question. So one thing I made sure to do is not to reread The Moon is a Harsh Mistress within 5 or 10 years of starting the book, because I wanted to be inspired by the general themes, but I didn't want too many of the specific details too close to the surface, lest it come off as more of a fanfic, someone who's writing, oh, this is like Star Trek, except this time, Kirk has got a relationship with someone who looks a lot like teenage, girl me or something, which is a lot of Mary Sue's writing this sort of thing. One of the great things about mid-century science fiction, and particularly Heinlein, is you've still got that sort of full dose of American spirit. We're fresh off of, World War II, and yet we've still got a frontier. You can go uranium prospecting in Colorado. You can, buy a gun through the mail, or, pick it up at the hardware store, these sorts of things. And so, but the downside is that obviously time has passed. We know a lot more about the universe and about technology in the year, 2010 or 2020 than we did in 1950. So we're not going to have a, thinking computer that has lots of vacuum tubes in it. We are not going to have, this sort of fantastical, things for solar power and nuclear. Like, we've got lots of actual existence proofs of how things are more likely to work in the real world. So you don't want to do a retread of just rewriting a 1950s novel, because it's going to seem very cliched and backwards, looking, people with slide rules and, smoking their cigarettes. I'm looking at you on video. We would vape, these days. And so,
exactly. We would vape instead of smoke.
Right. But we've got tablets and online encyclopedias and large language models and all of these other things. So the trick is to do something that engages with some of the same themes, which is individuals escaping from these oppressive, not just governmental, but also social systems where there's a small set of opinions that you're allowed to have. You've got to, agree with the sort of school marms who are running all of society. Everything's got to be politically correct. And also, we see in government just this ongoing century or century and a half long shrinking of the individual sphere and individual liberty, where everything has got, seat belts and warning lights and, approved ingredients and labels on the side. So the trick is, how do you explore those themes, but take as a starting point, the year 2010 or 2015 and project forward, as opposed to taking 1950 as your starting point. And that's what I aim to do. So the series, I started writing on January 1st, 2011. And it took about 6 or 7 years to actually do 6 or 7 passes. I was doing about a draft a year, making it, better and better. And I set the, future setting 50 years out in the future. And we've already closed 10 years of that gap. And one thing that you quoted from the Amazon blurb was the long depression has gone on for 55 years or something like that. And there's something we see that as statists try to plan economies, they're always trying to solve problems. The Soviets with their Goss plan were trying to solve, how do we get exactly the right amount of steel here and there? How do we move these populations around? How do we make sure that everyone gets into the job that we want them to have? And the paradox is sort of the more you try to plan things and you remove the individual element and the freedom element, the worse the results you get. And so right now in the United States, we are sort of speed running the entire Soviet experience. And right now we're up in the year 2024 to, sort of the Khrushchev 1970s gray, sort of very low growth rates. A lot of people are saying, hey, you just can't win the system. The system is rigged. And we see in the real world that anytime you take a departure from that, there was a bit of an economic boom under Trump down in South America. I'm terrible with names. Milei, is that the politician?
Javier Milei
right.
in Argentina.
And, he's a hardcore Austrian and libertarian, and the economy is booming with his what is it, a fuerte as he's canceling various departments. And so I think that's, sort of the natural state of mankind, that when people are free, there is growth and productivity and everything. So the one thing that's not a science fictional element in the novels is the idea that in a free, unplanned society, you're going to have much higher growth rates, and people are going to, allocate resources in ways that make sense using Hayekian local knowledge.
Right. Well, and that's exactly it. The problem with the free market is that, in a lot of cases, you hear people say, well, the free market doesn't work. Well, that's because the government has interfered at almost every level of the free market. So technically it's not, it is a free market, but it's been modified, or there's a ripple effect. Every time the government touches it, it's like a pebble dropped in a pond and the ripples go out, and it messes with the whole thing. And that's what people don't understand. And, the thing that got me was, in your in the blurb again, it mentions the Bureau of Sustainable Research, where this governmental organization is working hard to suppress any new technology that might cause us to take a leap forward. Now, we've been on a technological hockey stick for 100 years on in the world, on Earth, right? Technology has made leaps and bounds in the last 100 years. It's advanced more in the last 100 years than it probably did in the previous 1,000 years almost. And so the idea that somehow somebody's going to turn that tap off so that they can control it. And as you pointed out, history's shown us that you can't control masses of people in that way. You can't control that. And if you do, you create problems. And I think you highlight that specifically with Aristillus in these books.
Thank you. Yeah. Someone was saying on Twitter to me, I'm on Twitter as Morlock P. The P is for publishing, Morlock P. Someone was saying last night or this morning, hey, Travis, I was telling a friend, a European friend, about your books and about the Bureau for Sustainable Research. And the European friend said, that's not science fiction. That's how EU regulations work right now. And, I think that's absolutely true. I work at a startup where the CEO was European, and he, came from Europe to the US just because, it's a dynamic society. Even with the regulations that we have, it's still far more dynamic than Europe. And we do have some modicum of economic freedom still, not as much as we should, but much more than some places. And that's why there is no Google, there's no Uber, there's no, Netscape, there's no Microsoft of Europe. The few high-tech-ish companies that they kind of have are these big government-created messes like, Arianespace, which is, sort of the equivalent in the US would be United Launch Alliance, just building, something that takes 10 or 20 years and, just gets trivially outpaced by Elon Musk. And Elon Musk is a bit of an Ayn Rand, good guy, just, sort of moving so fast that the regulations, have to try to chase to catch up with him. And it's beautiful.
No, I love that. I love it. That's the problem. See, technology moves so fast that government in its Leviathan state cannot adapt fast enough. And that's what, they talk about the gig economy. They talk about this, they talk about that. And you see government is still struggling even at this pace to try and keep up. And that's, I think, what you've encapsulated in that idea of no new technologies, because we've got to remain in control. But that's how, I mean, let's face it, that's how fortunes are made. That's how economies are pushed forward, is by that innovation of thought, of technology, of deed. I mean, all those things. And this idea that somehow some bean counter in some, gray painted room is going to figure out exactly what's best for everyone. How somebody in Washington, D.C. is going to figure out what's best for me up here 3,000 miles away in Alaska that doesn't have my experience or where I'm living or anything else, is just, it's so, it's just so false, and it's so really kind of audacious that they would think that they know better than us how we should live our lives.
I 100% agree with you. And I think a lot of the reason for that is the so-called elites obviously aren't particularly elite in anything other than their ability to bullshit. There's the old thing, those who can do, and these people are just good at using words to sort of conjure images and mirages and promote themselves and win elections. And the idea of a true meritocracy is paralyzing and horrifying to these people because the market selects, what is merit? Merit is the ability to get things done. And that's, these kinds of people do not like judging on the ability to get things done. They like judging on the ability to conform to the party line, on the ability to, sort of spin happy fairy tales, et cetera. And so you see this with people who have gone to these university programs and studied, sort of underwater basket weaving or, critical film studies or these sorts of things. And then they get on Twitter and they say, oh my God, Elon Musk is so dumb. He said such and such, and then he's doing this with his car and this other thing with, and it would be one thing if you're just sort of crap posting and calling somebody dumb, but like they honestly think, someone with a gender studies degree and a 103 IQ honestly thinks that they're smarter than, Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or, any great entrepreneur. And by the way, I don't want to say that like making $1 billion is the sine qua non of intelligence. There's a lot of hugely intelligent people who do other interesting things with their lives.
Right.
And so the reason that these people sort of hate and fear meritocracy is people unlike them will get to make decisions. People who do not have a gender studies degree, people who do not know the difference between, Kant and Foucault, will decide whether we should go to space. And like, isn't that really a question that has a lot of philosophical implications? Should we really be spending resources there? I think that we need to prioritize, primary education and make sure that, every child understands all 57 genders and on and on and on. So the idea that, someone can just mix their labor with available resources and create much more than was there before. And this is another thing. They can't even conceive of non-zero sum games. When they see Elon Musk ending up with $100 billion, they want to know, where did that money come from? Was it stolen from Africans or was it stolen from working class Americans? We know it was stolen. We just don't know where. So the Aristillus series is really among other things, a paean to this entire, older American concept, whether we're talking, 1720s, cutting down some forest in Massachusetts and planting a farm, or, 1920s, building a car or a tractor, or 2020s, building a startup. This American can-do attitude of creating wealth where there was not wealth before, just with hard work and ideas.
Well, and I think a lot of it goes back to what you're talking about with the people who are, again, the gender studies folks, is that they don't understand meritocracy because they are not producers. They're consumers, right? They're consumers. And so that's why meritocracy terrifies them, because they can't, and they're infected with that disease, which I like to call the politician's disease, which is somehow in their intelligence, in their genius, they know better than you how you should fill in the blank, live your life, spend your money, raise your children, whatever it is. That's the elitist disease, the statist disease, is we know better than you how to X. And that's why we're at where we're at. We got about a minute here.
There was someone, it might have been Thomas Sowell, might have been someone else, who boiled this distinction down into makers and takers. Some people build things and others just take and redistribute 80% and take 20% off the top for themselves. And, God bless the makers.
You know what? You just hit on something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. That is really the nutshell. That is the whole problem that we're facing in the world right now is we've created whole industries on that 10, 15, 20% that's being taken of the money that's being recycled in the system. That's a fascinating discussion, which we're going to continue with here in just a moment. Travis Corcoran. I keep wanting to say Corcoran. Corcoran is our guest, author of the book, the Aristillus book, Powers of the Earth and Causes of Separation, and of course the Escape the City series as well, which is a homesteading series. We'll continue with Travis here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, Travis Corcoran, our guest here. You hit on something that just it was like a little sore spot because I've been thinking about this a lot. We've been seeing this more and more where all these government. There was an article this morning about downtown Anchorage, and this is a total sidebar, Travis, but I'll wrap it back to you. They're going to be installing a temporary protected bike lane in downtown Anchorage. Why? Well, it's a federally funded project with a partnership through the DOT, and they're doing a study to see if it makes sense. And if it does make sense, there will be other opportunities to finance more permanent year-round projects to do bike lanes in Alaska in a city. And I'm like, it's because everybody along that whole line is getting paid. The people doing the study and then the people managing it and all that money. And then and it's $1 million program. And then you're employing 2 or 3 people. And then everybody is relying on it. It is just say no to government dough. That's kind of our thing around here. But
I've spent some time in Anchorage, and I cannot think of a city that less needs a bike lane than that fair city. So
we need a dedicated bike lane. You're going to shut down a whole lane of traffic as a dedicated bike lane for the whole summer.
I've got an idea, or not an idea. There's something here in New Hampshire equally stupid. We have the White Mountains, which is a mountain range in the northern part of the state, and the Appalachian Trail crosses through there, and there are lots of other trails. And there are a lot of peaks, 10,000 feet, not very big by Western standards, but still, these are the treeless peaks we have. And to get up there, you're scrambling up rocks and it's uphill. And there are cabins on some of these peaks. And a few years back, they made the cabins wheelchair accessible, so that if you get a crowd of porters to carry you and your wheelchair up 10,000 feet and then place you at the base of the cabin, you can then roll up the ramp the last 9 or 10 feet. So
accomplishment. Mission accomplished. Just mission accomplished. That probably only cost $25,000 per cabin to make them ADA compliant.
I bet it's a lot more.
I mean, yeah, it is so astonishing, and where is the common sense? Where is that kind of it's amazing they call it common. It's so rare kind of thing, and like you said, the American, the ethos of, can do, we'll do it on our own, rugged individualism. We don't need to get off my lawn kind of, people that's how I was raised. That's obviously how you were raised. That's how many of the listeners of the show, that's what they believe and how they feel. And yet we are just assaulted at every turn by people who say we're toxic because we believe we can do it ourselves. We're toxic because we believe that we have some kind of exceptionalism because we want to do it ourselves. Shouldn't we want the whole kumbaya? Shouldn't we want to lift everybody up? And shouldn't everybody be equally miserable kind of thing, right?
So there's one really funny thing about the left, and this is branching off of your phrase equally miserable. On the one hand, they love to use the word sort of mental health, and this attitude isn't healthy, and this one, but there are statistics showing that they are by far the most depressed, the most miserable people. And there's this sort of seductive trap. But I mean, there's a lot of seductive traps in life. You're feeling a little depressed and you think, gosh, I really need a bourbon right now. and you have it, and then one more and one more, but then you wake up the next day with a hangover. So there's this trap of, oh, this is going to make my life easier, and yet if done to excess, it can make it worse. And this applies across all sorts of things. Eating a sugary snack, I just need a little pick me up, and then at the end you're having the carb crash and you're worse than where you started. And I think that leftism is one of these things where you think, okay, I'm a bit sad, I'm unhappy, I hate my dad, I don't like work. I'm going to, there's this ideology that promises answers, and it tells me everything I want to hear. It tells me that, my dad was a patriarchal a-hole. It tells me that work really isn't good, so it's not my fault. It tells me that my boss is mean. It tells me that my lack of achievement in life is not my own fault, but the fault of society. Therefore, I can feel good about myself. It's nothing inherent to me. And I do have sympathy for people who fall into this mimetic trap, because first of all, the entire society is pushing this worldview on you, and you can't blame people for listening to their teachers, their, the media, the president's wife, on and on and on. But then you get in the trap where you think, okay, I'll nibble the cheese, and you think, okay, it's not my fault. Society did this to me, and then you're left and paradoxically in this position where now you're full of rage and there's nothing you can do. So, maybe you chew more of the cheese in this mousetrap, and you get into this worldview where everything has been done to you. The
Right.
Imperialism has created this racist system, and patriarchy has created this system that doesn't take women seriously. And the tech bros like Elon Musk have stolen all of the money that should have been mine. And people are miserable.
No, you're 100% right. And they get to the point to where then all shades of gray are now drained out. It is severely black and white. It is us and them. It is the they. You start to they and other people and do all this other kind of stuff. And it's a whole thing. All right, we're jumping back into it here. Travis Corcoran, our guest, The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, yada, yada, yada.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Yeah, not your daddy. Although I saw my daddy. He was in the chat room. My dad's actually in the chat room. I saw him earlier today. Hey, Dad. Love you. All right, let's continue on. Travis JI Corcoran, our guest, author of the Aristillus series of books. You can find them on Amazon. They are amazing, and you should go out right now. And if you got some Audible credits laying around, you should listen to it, especially because they're read by Sean Rennett, who is one of my favorite narrators. In fact, I'm listening to another series of books right now that Sean narrated. Did you get a chance to pick, or was that a happy accident?
That was a happy accident. I've got a friend who is also an independent science fiction author, J.A. Sutherland, and he writes great stuff. So go to Amazon and check him out, J.A. Sutherland. And he introduced me to the fine folks at Podium Publishing, who do audiobooks for some of his stuff. They signed a contract with me. Sean is someone they work with. And they said, we were thinking about Sean. What do you think? And at that point in time, I knew nothing about audiobooks. I'm like, sounds good. Sure. Whatever you think. So that worked out very well. You're far from the first person who's told me that they checked him out because of the narrator.
That's funny. Mark Tufo said the same thing. I interviewed Mark here a while back. He's one of my other favorite authors.
Cool.
And he was like, yeah, I had no idea. They said this guy, and he was like, fine. And he's like, best thing I ever did. So,
it
was great stuff. We were just talking during the break, as we are wont to during the commercial break. And we were talking about this whole, the main problem being is that we've created a society where people are, it's a dependency society, right? Where everybody's been told that whatever's going on in your life that you don't like, it's not your fault. We've taken away personal responsibility. We've taken away that idea of rugged individualism, and we have to lay the blame on somebody. So it must be your parents' fault, society's fault, the school's fault, the gun's fault. It has to be the fault of somebody else. It couldn't be your own personal choices or personal responsibilities. And the minute you try and shine the light on that maybe it is their responsibilities, the whole world loses it, right? And that's, I mean, you talk in Aristillus, you focus on that very clearly, that it is those personal responsibilities and people making those choices that have gotten them to where they're at.
Yeah. And, sort of hopping away from the book and just sort of talking about worldview and morality and everything, I think that many on the left like to say, it's not your fault, it's society's fault, because they think the only alternative to, society did it is you individually are a terrible person, and the guy who's doing better has proven that he's a better person, and you should be ashamed. And, there's a bit of truth to that, if someone is, heavier than, to some degree, they're taking more calories in than they're burning. If someone drinks too much, they're the one that's pouring the drink. So, you've got free will. But that, acknowledging that isn't the exact same thing as saying, and let's bully the hell out of these people who, are not, sort of living their best lives. Life is hard. And, everyone, has a mix of making the best decisions they should and some that they shouldn't. And I think that, sort of conventional Western Christian morality draws that distinction and has some nuanced understanding where it talks about, hating the sin, but loving the sinner. And this ties in earlier where I was saying I'm sympathetic to people who are, in some sense, addicted to leftism. They took a nibble because it seemed appealing. They took another one. And, the biggest victims of, leftism are the people who've been taken in by it. The rest of us, unfortunately, get hit with the blowback from it. So, I think if you want to talk about positive programs for change, thinking about why people fall for leftism, thinking about why people, fall for regulation, all these other things, it's delivering something. It's psychic comfort or, aid. It's a crutch.
Security, a framework.
Exactly.
It's something right. Yeah.
And so, a challenge for, whether you want to call it the right or the libertarian view or something is, realizing, hey, leftism has achieved huge successes over 150 years. It's had this Gramscian long march through the institutions. And, it's just always taking one more step, one more nibble, one more salami slice. We can't say, hey, things were better in 1990. Let's just roll back every single thing, 20 or 30 years. I mean, I personally would love to, but what I'm getting at is it's not a marketing slogan that is going to work because, the college campuses are dominated by people right now who are saying, oh gosh, things were, terrible in 1990, even worse in 1970, utterly terrible in 1950. And so, they've already sort of won that argument incrementally, step by step. So just saying, no, you're wrong isn't a winning strategy. And that's a big challenge. How do we engage in the culture war? How do we engage and take back our country?
Well, and that's exactly it. How do we model it after the methodology of the left without taking up the ideology?
Right.
I mean, that's the problem. And I think that's, that has been our staggering point and our stumbling point this whole time as we're trying to say this rugged individualism is important, but at the same time, because it's kind of like the ideology and the methodology are tied together in that kind of string and cheese kind of thing that we,
I've got a friend, David Hines, who is sort of a political theorist and very interested in left-wing organizing principles. He's on the right. And his thesis is we need to do the things that the lefties do. And that's interesting. I'm not sure if he's right or not. There's a meme, you may have seen it, many of your listeners may have seen it, which is hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. I am sometimes curious, can we take back our existing culture, or is there this inevitable, sort of for everything there is a season? We are perhaps in the late stage, imperial America, where everyone is, voting themselves welfare out of the public coffers. The elites are corrupt. And so, maybe we have to go through some degree of collapse. And so I, am not choosing to write science fiction about how we really get our crap together, and then in 2032, we all vote the right way, and it all goes back to 1950, except with nuclear reactors and ray guns. I'm voting about it gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And, the Roman Empire collapsed. And yet some of the ideals, I mean, I actually studied Roman history. I double majored computer science and Roman history in college. The Roman Empire was terrible in a lot of ways. I mean, they had crucifixions, they had slavery, they,
Right.
tortured people to death in the Colosseum. But there were some good ideals, and those good ideals were rebirthed later. And so in the United States, a lot of our early federal iconography was the architecture and the symbols of Rome. It'd be great if we could take America back, but maybe America's done for. But the stars and bars, will fly over Mars in the year 2500 with people who, speak a degenerate form of English, and they celebrate the 4th of July. They're not sure of all of the details, but it's a good time to shoot guns and have hamburgers.
Yeah. Well, and I've often said maybe we've gone too far forward to go back. I mean, that's the question. Are we bingo fuel? Can we return to base, or do we have to move forward kind of thing? I think that's the question that a lot of us have been asking ourselves over the last 5 or 6 years at this point. Travis Corcoran, again, author of the Aristillus series. You could find him on Amazon. MorlockPublishing.com is where you go for his publishing house. And I really expect an email from you the next time you get a book out, because I want to interview. We're going to talk about that, whatever it is. When is the YA stuff supposed to come out here?
I finished the first novel. The second one is half done. And so I'm going to force myself to do the Kickstarter sometime this year, maybe this summer.
Okay. Well, you look forward, and we'll highlight it for you. And maybe next year, should we see the third Aristillus book come out, you think?
Optimism is always good for the soul. It might not be correct. Let's be optimistic. That'll feel good.
Okay, it feels good. So in 2025, we'll be seeing the third Aristillus book. You heard it here first, folks. That's where it is. All right, Travis. I say thank you so much. I would love to have you on semi-regularly. I'd
love to be back, Michael. This is great fun chatting with you. You and your listeners obviously are totally simpatico with my worldview on liberty in America and other stuff. So let's do it.
Maybe we should have you back for a Firearms Friday.
Every
Friday we dedicate the full show to the firearm stuff. So maybe we should do that. All right, Travis, hold the line for just a second. Folks, we are out of time. We got to go. Nick Begich, candidate for U.S. House, is up next. We will continue with him here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. If you got to go to work, be kind. Love one another. Live well. Back with more. All right, Travis, I will give you the floor for any final thoughts here before we go. I see Nick's in the, I'm going to pull Nick in here because Nick, I'm sure, would enjoy this conversation as well. Nick Begich, meet Travis Corcoran, one of my favorite authors.
Great to meet you.
Good to meet you, Travis.
And you.
We're gonna sit down here with Nick and have a good conversation with him here in a minute. I'm gonna mute him for a second. I'm getting a little feedback, but Travis, I wanted to give you a chance to final thoughts on anything. Just you got the floor, my friend.
Cool.
Hit it.
I should have had a manifesto prepared so I could give final thoughts.
Really? Would you just rail?
Yeah. No. I would say, and this is a challenge for me too, but it's easy to give in to despair in these times where, we see the campuses exploding and, the geopolitical situation going to crap, and China's Navy getting bigger every year and ours rusting apart. But I think that the one thing that our side has going for it is that we engage with reality, whereas the American left does not. And so sooner or later, every time the American left gets control, it makes a disaster out of things. We see that, I'm not sure we should have been in Afghanistan in the first place, but certainly the American left sort of just totally fumbled getting out of there. We saw Obama ship literal pallets full of cash to Iran so that we could have a peace deal that would look good in the media, and it turned to crap, and Iran is involved in a lot of terrorism and everything. So when it comes down to it, libertarian ideas work, and left-wing ideas just make things worse. So I think that we as a society and we as freedom-loving people may go through some very rocky times, but I think that liberty is going to win in the end.
Well, and I think we've seen that. I remember it was 4 or 5 years ago. It was the first time ever. They did this annual Pew study, and they said that for the first time ever, this was in 2016, I think 2017, that the plurality of Americans identified more with libertarian ideals than Republican or Democratic.
Nice.
And it's been that way ever since. And Tyler says, he says, I'm sorry, but the answer to leftism isn't the right. The right creates more leftism, if that's what he was implying. But that's not, he was saying, I think, libertarian ideas, not right ideas, but libertarian ideas.
Yeah. And just as a very small caveat there, I think that some aspects of rightism overlap with libertarianism. Libertarianism says the government should not force you to do anything, but then it leaves space open to make your own decisions. And so, I do not necessarily want to have laws saying, families must be structured like this. People must go to work like that. These are things people should be free to make their own choices. But that having been said, once you're free to either, do lots of drugs and not work, or to, structure, your life a certain way, right-wing ideas tend to work. If ideas are good, they don't need to be forced on people. So,
right. Well, I don't want force from the right or the left,
right.
Libertarians plotting to take over the world to leave you alone.
Exactly.
That's the whole point at this thing. All right. Well, Travis, I'm gonna abuse that email address, so I've got it, and I will have you back on. If you get an idea or you got something you want to talk about, you reach out to me, and we'll.
Outstanding. Looking forward to chatting an email and coming back on the show at some point. See you guys soon.
Looking forward to reading that book next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Good to talk with you, my friend. I appreciate it. Travis JI Corcoran, our guest here. Okay. Nick is in the thing there. Hello, my friend. Boy, that was a big bear, man. That was a big bear. I saw that.
We got him. It was a lot of fun. Went out to Kodiak immediately after the Republican convention. Changed clothes, hit the airport, and took a flight out on Vertigo Air, and landed in Uyak Bay, and I had a couple of friends out there helping with the hunt. And next day, first legal day, got the bear. Got out actually a little bit early, surprisingly enough, and it was really a good opportunity to take a moment and breathe away from the campaign for a couple of days. So you got to always take a moment and reflect. And,
take a breath.
Yeah, it was good.
Take a breath. Yeah, well, good. I'm living my best life. I just interviewed one of my favorite authors, and now we got you on, so it should be good. And we're ready to go. So I'm going to plunk you back into the green room for just a second, and we're getting ready here. We're about a minute and a half out, so I'm going to do that. Folks, like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Again, let me drop you the link into the here is the link to the first book in Travis's series, the Aristillus series, Powers of the Earth. Again, both books are Prometheus Award winners. He won the 2018 Prometheus Award for the first one and the 2019 Prometheus Award for the second one. So they are well done. And I hope you go out there. And pick it up and enjoy it. It is amazing. In my library, I'm just looking. I see auto books in my library. They're both there, ready to go. Okay. Oh, and his Morlock Publishing, which is his other site where you can find his Escape the City farmsteading books. He does farmsteading as well. So it was good stuff. Okay. That's it. I think we are good to go. We're up against it. I can see it right now. Clock is ticking down. Let's get it going on. Back with more. Hour 2 of the Michael Duke Show. Nick Begich with us. We'll see what he has to say. Up next.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. We are ready to go, ready to jump in, ready to talk about hour two. Joining us this morning to discuss pretty much everything that has to do with all the stuff in the politics is Nick Begich, candidate for Congress and U.S. House. He joins us this morning back on the campaign trail after his quick bear hunt, and he's back on with it now. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Great to see you. Doing well. Glad to be back.
I'm glad you are back as well. We are, it's quick around here. We got that. You left last weekend. You left the state convention, the party there at Cook, and you went to the airport, flew to Kodiak, sat down, had a cup of coffee, killed a grizzly bear, came back, right? I mean, that's what it seems like. It seems like it was a fast round trip.
It was a quick round trip. Had to be out in the field until 3 a.m. the day after that you fly in per regulation, and saw a lot of bears out there. I've been told that Kodiak is sort of at carrying capacity for brown bears. And saw a really, really good one. And I got a Kimber, Montana 300 Win Mag, and used 190 grain ammo from about 100 yards. Bear came out, sitting right there, just presented itself perpendicular and stopped.
Shoot me, Nick.
And,
shoot me.
Yep. It was perfect. One shot took it down. And it was a good time with some good friends, and came back actually a day early. So good to be back, and lots of work to be done, lots of work in the months ahead to make sure we get some new representation for Alaska.
Yeah, well, I think we need it for sure. That's for sure. The race is starting to heat up, Nick. We're starting to see all the ads, right? We're starting to see the PACs are putting money in. We saw that the franking money is going in. We see now that one of the big groups that I think is a Soros-funded group is just said they're going to spend $4 million on television and all of this money going to support your opponent, because they know that this is going to be a battleground state. It's not a quote-unquote like presidential battleground, but as far as the Congress, this is a battleground state because they cannot afford to lose Mary Peltola.
That's correct. We all know that the House is very narrow majority for the Republicans, and the Democrats are trying to pull that majority over to their side. The map looks very favorable for Republicans with the Senate, but the House is a toss-up, and there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done, not just in Alaska, but across the country, in order for the conservative majority in the House to hold. And yes, Alaska is a battleground state. First time in our lifetimes that Alaska has truly been a battleground state for the House race. There are 5 districts that Donald Trump won in 2020 that Democrats won in 2022. And Alaska is one of those 5, and in fact is the most conservative of those 5. And so it's an absolute target pickup opportunity on the right. It's a huge defense priority for the left. and that's why you're going to see a tremendous amount of ads. Apologies in advance for folks out there, because you're just going to get inundated. And I'm already hearing from folks that the left super PACs are already running ad after ad. You mentioned the franking that goes on. For folks who don't know about franking, that is, frankly, I think it's a practice that should be discontinued.
I agree. I agree totally.
Yeah, it's terrible. You're actually using tax dollars for sitting members of Congress to, and I'm using air quotes for those on the radio, inform you of all of their achievements. And it's nothing but campaigning, in my opinion.
Outside the political window. Yeah, it's campaigning outside of the political window. It's legally allowed. They use federal money from their funds to tell you what a great job they're doing so they can campaign outside of the campaign season. It is the most offensive thing I've ever heard of. I mean, and this is fairly new. This is not something that's been going on for a long time, but it's totally offensive at this point.
It really is, especially for somebody who's already got amassed $2.5 million cash on hand. As you mentioned earlier, has over $4 million in pledged super PAC advertising, some of which is happening right now. And on top of all that, wants to use your tax dollars to campaign even more. It's a true waste of your money. And frankly, I think it's unethical. I don't think anyone on the left or the right should be doing that. But that's
I agree. I agree with that. All right. Well, Nick, let's talk a little bit about the hot news of the day in the Congress. And that is, of course, the question about whether or not the speaker is going to survive. I mean, this is kind of unprecedented, right? I mean, first of all, you had the first speaker get kicked out, which was again the first time ever, and in short order, oh, look at how easy it was, let's do it again. I mean, it's become a whole thing, but not that it's not called for, because he has not been able to deliver on what he promised, right? I mean, that's part of the problem here.
That is a problem, and I think a lot of us had high hopes for the new speaker. I think many have expressed disappointment with some of the priorities that have been prioritized, even as of not last week, but the week prior, in the House. I think we do need to be careful about using this as a tool to remove people on a regular basis. We saw it took over a month to find this speaker, and I think it's really up to the voters. The voters need to go to the polls, not just in Alaska, but across the country, and vote conservative Republicans into office. If we elect moderates, we're going to have a situation where we're going to have moderate representation in leadership in DC, and we need more conservative Republicans who have the strength to stand by the principles they ran on. And I think that's the great frustration that many of us have, is that people run on a particular set of principles and guidelines and values, and then they get down to DC and abandon many of those when under pressure. And we've got to have people that can stand strong, that are not going to abandon those values when they get down to the Beltway.
Well, and that's part of the problem, is that it's the pandering, right? I mean, it's the trying to be all things to all people. This is the problem that Johnson has got right now, is that he made all these promises to the Liberty Caucus and to some others, and then he found out that he couldn't get anything done without pulling everybody else in, and then having to. So, I mean, I guess the answer here is, or the solution is, don't make promises you can't keep, even if it's the way you're going to get elected. But at the same time, you got to stick to your guns. And that's part of the problem. We can't get back to regular order. We can't get back to where we were because the powers that be don't want it.
Well, and look, we all know we're not going to agree with one person all the time. We know that. That's just part of life. But what we should expect is that people will tell us the truth. That they say, look, this is what I believe. This is what we're going to focus on. For example, leadership came out and they said, look, we're not going to advance these foreign bills without certainty that we're taking care of our border first. That was a promise made, and sadly a promise broken. And look, if we're going to make those promises, we got to stick to those promises. That's what people expect. And even in cases where we don't agree, people on all sides respect folks to a certain degree when they stick to what they say they're going to do, and we have far too little of that in DC.
No, I mean, I would agree with that, and that's part of the problem. Um, Tiff says, I'd rather them just not have a speaker. That way nothing gets done, which is better than what we've got. And Fat Ray says, people do vote for conservative Republicans. Turns out politicians lie. I mean, right, Nick? We've seen this before.
That's true.
We've seen this before.
There's nothing false about that. And, you know, it's a sad statement on our political state in the country. And
well, and that makes it even tougher for people like you who are already fighting an issue with name recognition, right? You've got the wrong name for the recognition because, right, you know, the name that you got is a Democratic name. And so people are already, you know, frustrated by that. And they're like, is he just lying to us? Is he just lying? I mean, no, but how do you convince them, right? I mean, how they already know politicians lie. And so they're like,
you know, it's a tough thing. The only thing you can do is see the proof in the pudding, right? And I'll tell you this: you know, when I'm out there campaigning, people are saying, "Wow, I can't believe you're saying this. I can't believe you're being this direct. I can't believe you're being this transparent." And look, if you can't campaign on these issues in a strong way, I promise you this: when you get to DC, you won't do anything about it, right? And so the best evidence of whether someone's going to do something in DC is to see how they're campaigning. Are they working hard?
Right.
Are they speaking in a transparent way? Are they taking on issues that are tough to take on? Right? Are they saying things?
Are they taking a position on the issues? Are they just talking around the position? Like, are they for it or against it? I can't tell. They've been talking a lot about it, but I can't, you know. Right.
Yes. Are they definitive? Are they telling you yes or no? A or B, on or off, right? Or is it a political dance, like you say, that you can't tell where someone's at? So, you know, that's a good clue, right? It's not the ultimate proof as to whether or not that person's going to do what they say they're going to do, but it's a good indicator. And if someone's not doing that, well, look out, because when they get to DC, the pressure's on, and the influence layer is there. And if they're afraid to talk about it on the campaign trail, they'll definitely be afraid to do anything about it in DC.
Right. Absolutely. Nick Begich is our guest, candidate for U.S. House. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. And we will return right after this. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, Nick Begich, our guest here on the program. And Rick says, or are they just telling us what we want to hear? I mean, sometimes they are. Some people are just they're going to tell you something and then they're going to, but I mean, if they willingly and willfully go in to do that, that's a tough thing. But you could tell a lot of times they're dancing around it, right? Dancing around it. Well, are you or aren't you? Will you or won't you? Oh, well, you know, that's a very good question. No. I mean, that's not an answer. Damn it. Give me an answer.
No, here's another thing too. People who are afraid to go on radio, right, on a streamed broadcast like this, or who really limit that exposure, that tells you a lot also, because a lot of politicians, I call it the attack surface. The more you put yourself out there, the more the opposition can come in and take a clip here or there and you know, end your campaign because you misspoke or you said something edgy, right? But look, again, if someone's afraid to do those things, I guarantee you they're going to be afraid in DC, and that's not who you want. You want somebody who's willing to engage you.
And I agree with that. I mean, anytime you get a candidate who's like, well, I can be on there, but I can only be on there for 4 minutes and 37 seconds. And I'm like, I barely got your name out and where you were from in 4 minutes or 30 seconds. And we've seen this, right? We've seen candidates do that. I mean, the governor did it when it was during his campaign. I can be there for 8 minutes. And I'm like, what about
I think your audio cut out on me there. Sorry. Okay, I see. Jennifer's telling me my audio is on, so I will speak here. I got a text from a friend, Robert Wall. Remember that there's HEA board election. That's Homer Electric. Ballots are due by May 1st, so make sure you get those ballots in. Make sure you are voting. Make your voice be heard. The left is trying to take over board seats, even at energy companies and cooperatives across the state. There's elections in the Valley as well. So make sure that you are participating in those. Usually there's only about a 10 to 15% turnout in those local board elections. So it's really important that you get those ballots in. Make sure that we've got conservatives representing you and keeping your energy costs low. MEA is April 30th. I see in the chat, and make sure you get those in. Bill Kindig is a personal friend of mine and someone that I've come out publicly supporting for MEA board. I appreciate your vote, and please make sure you get those in. We're on the Michael Duke Show. I lost Michael's audio, but much to talk about. We're talking about a number of issues. First and foremost, what can you expect? What should you expect from someone who's running for a political office? And before we lost the audio, we were talking about the importance of making sure that the people that are running for office that you're evaluating are actually available to you, that they have the ability to go out on a show like this and have a conversation direct with the public, take some tough questions, answer the difficult issues of the day, and provide an articulated response, one that demonstrates some thoughtfulness and some courage. Because when you go down to DC and you're in the pressure cooker of DC and you're surrounded by the 20,000 registered lobbyists of DC, it's not going to get any easier. And if you can't do that sort of work at home, I promise you're not going to have an ability to do that.
That was a painful reminder as to what was going on. We're back here. Our guest is Nick Begich. I'm trying to pull all the strings together here. Everything come unstuck for a second there. Entertaining everybody on the stream here while I was away. Luckily, he was able to continue that. So let me pull this down here and see if we can get Nick back on the program. Hello, Nick. Thanks so much for.
Hey, I'm back now. I can't hear you, Michael.
For me while. Okay. I don't know if Nick can hear me. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Nick is there's quite a delay going on here. All right. So Nick, let's continue on here with our discussions and figure out what is going to be your big priority here as you take the reins here. If you get in there, what is going to be your priority issues, your big issues as you go into Washington, D.C.? What are you going to be at?
Well, I think, you've got national issues and you've got state-related issues. And let's talk about state-related issues first. My big priority for Alaska is to return as many federal lands to the people of Alaska as possible. I think we need to greatly diminish the control that the federal government has over Alaska lands, not just in terms of lands that they claim to own, but also the corridors to Alaska lands that are owned and controlled by the state of Alaska, native corporations, and private owners. We see over and over the Biden administration preventing Alaskans from having access to our own property. And we see that with the Ambler District Mining Road. We see that in King Cove. We see that across the state, and it prevents us from actually utilizing the lands that have been selected for development by the state of Alaska and by private landowners. So I think what we need to do is we need a big package specific to Alaska. And we've seen this with ANCSA, we saw it with ANOCA, so there's no reason why we can't have another package that clarifies critical access issues and moves some of these more of these properties that are owned and controlled by the federal government into state and local hands so that we can actually develop the resources of Alaska. So that is the priority on the Alaska side. Federally, I think when we talk about it many times, I want to be one of the hopefully growing chorus of voices calling for lower federal spending. I mean, the growth of government is absolutely out of control. We hear from politicians across the nation year after year talking about how they want to cut the budget. But I actually want to do that, and we need to do that. It's critical that we do that. And for those who have been paying attention to the news over the last few days, you see Japan has an absolute collapse in the yen. It has finally happened, and their economy is going to suffer greatly because of this. The yen is down 30% on the U.S. dollar in the last year because they let their government spending continue to be out of control to the point where they've got too many yen and not enough productivity.
Right. Which is what we're facing. I mean, we got the same kind of issue. We got too many dollars. That's where that inflationary factor pops in, and we just can't keep spending more than we take in. We talk about the arithmetic, right? This is the arithmetic that we're talking about.
That's right. At some point, the music stops. And the problem is that the delay between the action and the result is so long that many people believe that nothing will ever happen. And so we need to look at what has happened in other countries, and we've seen it throughout history, but we're seeing it happen today in the world's third largest currency with the yen. Literally happening over the weekend, that the yen is starting to collapse. The government of Japan is having to intervene in order to protect the yen from falling too precipitously. But that hurts savers, that hurts investors, it hurts retirees in Japan. And we're going to see the same movie play out unless the people of this nation are willing to elect folks to go to DC who are serious about putting a stop to this. I want to be one of those people for you. And look, I don't believe that we need incredible deficit spending in order to fuel our economy. I think that, in fact, is completely the opposite of what our founders had intended. And was never the purpose. In fact, the founders were very concerned about the idea of the creation of a central bank because they knew that third-party manipulation of the money supply was one of the ingredients to that contributed to the failure of any nation. And that's what we have. That's the problem that we're trying to address. And it's going to require people who are strong and have the ability to say no to go down to DC and fix this mess.
Senator Rob Myers in the chat room asks, does it take a balanced budget amendment, a spending cap, a return to regular order. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that we could be asking. I mean, you're one guy out of 500. How do we stop this runaway train of spend, spend, spend? Too big to fail spend.
All three of those things are great ideas, and I would support any or all of those in combination. I think the first thing that we've got to do is we got to get the interest rates back down. The interest rates, my opinion, raised arbitrarily in an attempt to slow the economy down. Well, the economy, when you juice the rates like this, what happens is the federal government, as they refinance their debt, have to pay an increasing portion of our tax dollars simply on interest payments, right? So right now we're spending over $1 trillion a year, projected to go as high as $1.7 trillion a year in just interest. That's more than 40% of all personal income taxes going to pay the interest portion of the bill. And as that rolls forward, it just gets worse. And so I think you got to lower the interest rates. That's one thing that we can do. We need to eliminate certain entire departments of government, the Department of Education being one of them. We don't need folks in DC telling us what to do and how to do what we do locally as it relates to education. And
we did fine for 100 years on that one without a Department of Ed, right?
That's right. There was no Department of Education until Jimmy Carter created it. And Jimmy Carter was not a great president. I think that's an established fact at this point. While Joe Biden may be the second coming of Jimmy Carter, I don't think we need to look to Jimmy Carter as the model. And so, he created Department of Education. There's several other departments that could be eliminated. And then we need to drive efficiency in government by cutting positions. We need to phase out certain positions. We need to deregulate. And that will allow us to actually meaningfully cut government over time. But as Senator Rob Myers points out, a balanced budget amendment, spending cap, these kinds of things will legally constrain the growth of government, and that's critically important as well. Because if you move from one Congress to another, if we're lucky enough to be able to elect people who will be serious about cutting government, it's only as good as the next Congress. So locking this in constitutionally is an important component as well.
No, and I say that, even whatever stumbling blocks or roadblocks you can put into the next Congress to prevent them from rolling back any changes is important. You have to make it as difficult as possible because right now they're on this is like they're in the HOV lane, right? I mean, they're in the, everybody else is in traffic and they've got the dummy sitting in the right-hand seat and they're just cruising right on down the bypass there. Pay no attention to the mask on this dummy in my seat next to me. They're cruising, just spend. And something's got to change. I mean, something has got to change. Like you said, $900 million in debt service last year. They projected 2 months ago, 1.2. Now, as you said, you're hearing 1.5, maybe 1.7 in debt service payments this year. How do you continue to, you just can't. You can't. I mean, how far does that go? Does it go to $2 trillion next year? I mean, how far does it go?
Yeah, what ultimately happens in these scenarios, and we can look at other examples, case studies around the world. Argentina is a great example, right? Argentina went full socialist. They remained socialist for several decades. Finally, the public had enough. They elected a hard libertarian with Javier Milei. He came in and he said, I will cut government. And I'm going, and he was dead serious. And he cut tens of thousands of positions across the government, deleted agency after agency, and said, we're going to return to a free market economy. And initially there was concern. The currency, which was already in crisis, inflation was already in the hundreds of percent. We think we have it bad here. It was insane there. And the currency is now stabilized. He's only been in office for a few months. The currency has stabilized for the first time in years because he got serious about fiscal discipline.
Right.
And
since the default
that's the road. Yeah, that's the road that we're headed down, right? We can do it the easy way, solve the problem now, and it will be a little bit of pain today or a lot of pain later. And there's arguments, there's good arguments for folks who say, look, we can't cut things like defense spending. And I say, and I understand that. And I agree with that in many respects, but it's hard to defend a bankrupt nation. And you got to understand that there's a direct connection between our fiscal health and our national security. If we lose the balance sheet of our nation,
Right.
we don't have the ability to defend our nation. So really, this is a national security
Right.
issue. Long term, it may be the most important national security issue.
Well, I mean, that was the funny thing is that James Mattis, the former Secretary of Defense under Trump, old Bulldog Mattis, he actually said as much. He said that the national debt is a national defense issue. And he's not wrong. I mean, how do we get it to turn around? But that's the problem, Nick, is that we're too big to fail, right? Oh, that would never happen to us. Oh, this is going, it would, and anytime you talk or see these politicians talking, they're like, oh yes, we'll make it work. But they just keep spending more. It's insane.
It is. It's insane. I mean, I think it can be derived from a way in which human beings just tend to think, right? So if we haven't seen something happen to us in our lifetimes, then we assume that it will never happen to us in our lifetimes. And you see this repeated over and over throughout history. For example, you may see places, for example, down in Seattle, Portland, you've got entire towns that are built right on the water. We know every 300 to 700 years, there's a massive tidal wave that comes through. And yet we build these cities right there. We know for a stone cold fact that at some point in the not too distant future, there will be a catastrophic event in that region. But we haven't seen it in our lifetime. So we think, oh, it's never going to happen. It's part of the human psychology. And we've got to have leadership that understands, hey, we're not immune to the problems of this world. We aren't, there's nothing special about us that makes us immune to math. And we've got to be smarter about this. We've got to look at history. We've got to look at other examples around the world and say, look, that we know where this road goes. So let's be strong. Let's take our medicine early. Let's get this under control now. And if we do, we will protect future generations from dealing with the consequences of our poor decision making.
Well, and like I've said many times, this is the train heading towards the bridge. The bridge is out. We know the bridge is out, and we should stop. But these guys are just like, nope, we'll just keep throwing coal in it. It'll be spectacular when we get there. And it just, at previous guest, Travis Corcoran, just made the comment. He was a major of Roman history, and Rome fell. The greatest empire in the Western world, and it fell. And so if that can fall, what's to stop us? What's to stop us here? That's the fact. All right. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, thinking radio. Nick Begich is our guest. We'll be back with more.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes on Demand. Oh, and it's free, like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, man, that was a freaking train wreck. I don't know what happened. And then I rebooted, and there's 4 monitors in here, and now I only have 1 monitor is actually working. I don't know what went on. Something happened. So luckily it's the big monitor because the other 2 are dead. So I don't know. We'll have to going to be a little slow on the podcast today because the podcast recording crashed as well. So we'll be we'll be pulling it off of podcast off of YouTube today, I guess. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to play this for you, Nick, and I want to get your opinion on this because I saw this the other day, and this really spoke to me, and I want to throw this out here. So I'm going to mute you for a second and just play it for you so that you can hear it and give me your thoughts on it. Here we go.
You and him and me and everybody listening here, when we add up all our taxes over the course of a year, we work for the government more than we work for ourselves. It's not just income tax, it's sales tax, it's property tax, it's all this other. What does that make us? That makes us tax slaves in our own country that's supposed to be the freest country in the world. That has to change. I believe that the reason they make it that way is to financially oppress people for control reasons. You know, if people don't have financial resources and they're worried about making their ends meet, it's very difficult for them to concentrate on what's happening in Washington, D.C. or what's happening in their local politics. So if you create enough division, enough hardship, enough confusion, enough anxiety, enough stress, it's really hard for the average person to get activated to pay attention to what's happening in the country, which gives them free reign to do whatever they want.
Your thoughts on that, Nick?
What's to disagree with? We live in a hamster wheel society, and
right.
I've said this for a while. I mean, and you'll hear me say it a lot. There's when you're 18 years old and you graduate from high school, you're told, "Hey, go get a car. Go get a car.
Right.
You need to get a mortgage. And don't forget, if you don't get some student loans, you're not going to be successful. So you better load up on student loans." So people load up on car loans.
Don't forget credit card.
Wow. Yeah, credit card debt, and a mortgage, and all the financialization of the United States over the last 60 to 70 years allowed us to get things earlier than we used to be able to get them. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but I am saying that what happens is we end up making these decisions at a point in our lives where we don't have the most information. We're not really in a position to sign up for 30 years or even 40 years of committed debt. And we do that, and we think we're building a castle. But in reality, many of us end up building a prison for themselves. And that prison is a mountain of debt that you spend the next 30 years trying to climb out of. And it keeps you on this wheel. You get done with a hard day of work, you go home, you're exhausted, you got 2 hours of, maybe 3 hours of entertainment, hang out with the kids, make dinner, go to bed, do it all over again the next day. And that cycle is not good for us. I think in the unbridled pursuit of growth, the financialization of America looked good on paper, but it's made people's lives in many ways. It's made us like machines, and I think that's a broader comment. It's on society in general, but I think the clip that you played, it reminds me of that thought that really, to be free, we need to be free of debt, not just at the government level, but personally as well. And there's a lot of radio. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's not just debt. I mean, he's talking about the taxes too on top of it. It just makes it that much harder overall.
Well, you're right. And you heard President Trump talk about this in 2016 when he was running for president at that time. And there were people alleging, well, you don't pay enough taxes. And he said, well, wait a minute. I pay property taxes, I pay sales taxes, I pay all these other taxes. And in a place like New York, you add all that up and it's a huge percentage of your net income. I mean, we're talking, it might touch 60%, maybe 70%. And that's an enormous take. I mean, our founding fathers, when they were talking about taxes that upset them, they were talking about a 3% tax, 3% tariff, right? And that was enough to contribute to, hey, revolution. And if they saw the tax burden that we're dealing with today, I don't know what they would say, but it wouldn't be good, right? I mean,
They would be in a tavern. They'd be in a tavern talking a little treason, I think, is what would be going on based on my readings of their writings and what they believed. That the 3% tax on mail, that was the last straw for them. What we see today, that would be full-blown revolution going on today. All right, we're 12 seconds out. We got to jump in. Nick Begich is our guest, The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do this thing. Here we go. Okay, here we are. Final segment for today. Nick Begich is our guest. We're going to continue with him right now. One final shot at the bite at the apple here for today. Nick, you know, we're right in the beginning. You've been running for election for a while now, but we know that usually the season doesn't start until, generally, historically, it's always started somewhere in April, right? So now is the true, real start. We're starting to see the money fly around. Things are going on. What do you plan on doing right now to combat all the money, all the horsepower, the incumbency? What are you planning on doing to get out there, and how can people help you?
I think the biggest thing, we all know each other in Alaska. There's 6 degrees in Kevin Bacon, but there's probably 2 degrees of Michael Dukes, right? So in Alaska, we all know someone who knows someone, and because of that, there's a lot of money that has been spent in the past in elections. I remember in the Senate election a few years ago, I think the Democrats outspent the Republicans 3-1. There may have been $40 or $50 million all in on all sides on that. And but the Democrats lost that election by double digits. And so the money, yes, it's a factor. I'm not going to say it's not, but what really matters is us paying attention, talking to neighbors, colleagues, friends who maybe they don't have as much of an interest in the political side, or they've got other things that are going on in their lives. They don't have the time to dedicate to this process. We've got to be engaged. We've got to be engaged. It can't be a casual observation, hoping that other people are paying attention. We've got to be a part of taking our state back. And so for folks out there that are wondering, what can you do? Obviously, appreciate your financial support. We need that, definitely need that. I'm proud to say that we have taken 99.9% of our funding from individuals, and far more than half of that has come from inside the state of Alaska. I'm the only candidate in this race that can say that. But at the end of the day, it's not money that decides elections, it's voters. And so getting the word out, talking to others, don't be afraid to talk to others about this. Doesn't have to be combative, can be collaborative and polite conversation, but have the conversation. It's an important conversation to have, because our lives and our freedom are at stake in these elections. Our way of life is what we're talking about. And are we going to remain free? Are we going to stay free? Are we going to have a strong financial future? Or are we going to go down a road of socialism, which is where the left is trying to take this country?
Well, and I agree with that. We have to do something. What we've been doing is not working. Now with the new ranked choice voting system, that's going to be even more confusing. The Republican Party insists on running multiple candidates against this. It's like we keep playing into the hands of the opposition. I mean, it's like a playbook where somebody's just running the plays. Yep, there we go. Oh, yep, we shot ourselves in the foot. Yep, we spun. Oh, yep, we played Russian roulette. Yep, we circled the wagons and shot each other. Yep, it's just like every one of those things is like one right after the other. How do we stop that madness?
Well, I've said before, and now you're going to hear me say this just like a broken record. If Nancy finishes ahead of me in the primary, I'm going to get out of this race. And I hope that she or others in the race would commit to doing the same thing, because I really believe we have to have the best opportunity to contrast the position on the right and the position on the left. Position on the left is one of, as we just said, socialism. Leftism is trying to take more of our hard-earned dollars and put it in the hands of government so they can spread it around to their friends. And look, it's anti-freedom. You know, it's interesting because they call themselves liberals, but if you look up the definition of classical liberalism, it reads, and I would encourage people to do it. Go out to Wikipedia, look at the definition of classical liberalism. It reads like a Republican platform, a conservative platform. They have hijacked these terms and tried to make them their own. But their path is clear. I mean, we see it in the demonstrations around the country, in college campuses and elsewhere, as they gear up for another summer of love in 2024. We're going to see this contrast, right, where people believe that individual effort should not be rewarded, that excellence is to be penalized, and equity is the solution to all of life's problems, and it's simply not true. The only way,
equity of opportunity. Was it equity of opportunity or equity of outcomes? That's the question, right? Because
exactly,
we advocate for the equity of opportunities, not the equity of everybody is equally miserable, right?
That's right, and that's where that goes, because eventually that entire philosophy ignores human nature. It ignores the idea that you're rewarded for your work, right? And attempts to take the people who are working the hardest, who are doing the right things, who are working the smartest, and take that accrued benefit and hand it to people who aren't working hard, or aren't working smart, or aren't doing the things that they need to be doing. Maybe they don't have the right behaviors in life. And eventually, if you remove that incentive for people to do better, they won't do better. They'll say, what's the point? And it drags everyone else down. That's what's at stake. We got this academic ivory tower left, and they have fully embraced this. I think if you went back, 10 years ago, you would never hear anyone in the US Congress suggest that they themselves were socialists. Today, you have numerous people in the Democrat Party proud to be socialists and pushing the idea. That's what's on the ballot. I mean, Mary Peltola is voting with these people 90% of the time. 90% of the time. And then she has her friends in media and elsewhere say, oh, she's a disloyal Democrat. No, she's not. She's with them 90% of the time because she agrees with them on those issues. That's our representative today. We need to fix that. And that's why I'm running, because I don't think that I know that it doesn't represent the people of the state of Alaska. That's not our ethos. That's not who we are as people. It has nothing to do with us. And we can't have someone down in DC saying this is what Alaska is like. It's not.
Right. Well, and is she even saying, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm not hearing a whole lot of anything other than she seems to be voting for certain bills that the party tells it, but she doesn't seem to be doing anything for our state per se. I mean, we talked about the franking ads and how it's informing us of all the things that she did, but is she really doing anything other than I haven't seen a whole lot of anything other than she continues to vote for the Green New Agenda and some of these other things that are kind of putting Alaska at risk for the future.
Well, and here's the thing, there's a school of thought that says, well, wouldn't it be nice if Alaska had at least one Democrat in the delegation, because maybe that person would be able to educate other people in their conference, or maybe the president if it's a Democrat. Well, we got a Democrat president, and he's taken more executive actions against Alaska during Mary Peltola's tenure in Congress than any president in our lifetime. So apparently that doesn't carry any weight. 62 now executive orders targeting the state of Alaska specifically from Joe Biden. He's completely ignored Mary Peltola. He said, not interested in your perspective or feedback. So it doesn't matter whether she's for development or against development. The Democrats don't care. Democrat leadership doesn't care. They are willing to sacrifice the state of Alaska in order to appease their radical lower 48 environmental lobby. And they need that. And they need to do that in order to generate the donations that they hope to get to win elections in the lower 48. So Alaska is being sacrificed. Mary Peltola carries no weight with the administration, no weight with her Democratic colleagues in the Congress, and has not been successful at communicating the importance of Alaska to the rest of the country. And for those reasons alone, she should be replaced.
Yeah, well, she's taken some heat from some of her local communities. I've been watching some of the Facebook posts out there. There's a lot of things to say. Fat Ray says, I really enjoy paying her to lie to me with those ads. Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, that's the thing, the franking ads and everything. It is infuriating that we feel so helpless, Nick. That's the problem, is that we feel helpless because this is the kind of stuff that's going on. It's the business as usual. And what do we do from here? You got 2 minutes here. I'll give you the final thoughts here of the day on the way out the door here.
Look, I get that. Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. If you lose hope, we lose. Okay. If you give up, I promise you don't win. So you got to stay strong. You got to work hard. You got to get up every day and you got to fight for the state and fight for the things that you believe in. And that's not just true in politics. That's true in all of life. You've got to fight. You've got to get up. If you don't win, you get up, you go back to work the next day. That's what defines somebody who's going to be successful in the long run. And you've got to do that too. As a citizen of the state of Alaska, as a citizen of the United States of America, this is our nation. We've got to fight for it. And at the end of the day, the left is very committed. They're very committed. They get up every day and they fight for what they believe in, like it's their religion. And if we're not willing to do the same thing, at the end, we're not going to win these battles. So I would encourage everyone out there. Look, I know it's tough. I know that there's an overwhelming amount of money from the left. It's trying to convince swing voters, hey, this is the way, and this is a great person. No, we've got to fight. And I know that Alaskans are fighters. We're going to fight, and we're going to win as we head into November.
All right. Nick Begich, he said, we're going to fight and we're going to win there. He got a little bit of a stutter there at the very end with the internet. Thank you, Nick Begich. I appreciate you coming on board, my friend. As always, it's good to hear from you. Folks, tomorrow, Brad Keithley, Chris Story will be joining us, and we will be continuing then. And then later on this Wednesday, we got more. We got more coming up this week. It's going to be a busy week. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will see you tomorrow. I guess final thoughts, Nick, here before I let you go. Anything else you want to hit on? What's your prediction?
Yeah, we've got an event. I should have mentioned this on the radio, but we've got an event out at Bell's Nursery Tuesday night. And for folks who are in the Anchorage area or even out in the Valley, we'd love to see you out at Bell's Nursery. I know it's a little bit of a drive for those in the Valley, but come out, support the campaign, and we'd love to see you. We are going to be on the Kenai. We're going to be up in Healy. We're going to be all over the state in the coming weeks as the campaign heats up. You'll have opportunities to meet us, keep track of what's going on our Facebook page, Nick for Alaska, and our website, alaskansfornickbegich.com. We'll be getting signs up soon. We'll be doing all the things that say, hey, it's campaign season. And again, be involved, get engaged. This is your state. This is your country. And for those that are listening, I know that you're engaged, but take it off the radio, out in the real world, and it'll help us a great deal. Yeah.
Take the information and then go actually use it. Don't just take it and marinate in it. You've got to actually go use it out there in the real world. So that's what's got to happen. All right, Nick. Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate you coming on board and joining us. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to crack you up earlier. I saw that you were reading my comments when it was I agree to disagree. That's what it's all about. Every crowd's got one of them, every village has one. So there you go. What are you going to do? All right. Well, thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. As always, good to talk with you. We will see you next week. Okay. Or we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. All right, folks. Well, I don't know what's going on with my computer, but we'll see if I can salvage it. It'll be interesting to see if it just breaks or what. We'll figure it out. We will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good day. Enjoy. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. The Michael Duke Show.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.